Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
How did he get back into Canada?
CBC News learns an American citizen has been kicked out of Canada 6 times. Why does he keep coming back? Plus,
if we see tariffs, it could be the backbreaker on some of communities who have no access to other markets other than the United States.
BC's forestry sector looks for ways to soften the blow of American tariffs. And
we don't want to be alarmist, but we also want to take this very seriously.
Targeted or not? Vancouver police say a pregnant woman was left badly hurt after a rock smashed the windshield of her Tesla.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. CBC News has learned an American citizen has been kicked out of Canada 6 times. He last entered the country in January. As Yasmin Khanea reports, the case has raised concerns on how he keeps getting into this country despite multiple deportation orders.
A search warrant obtained by CBC News from the Canada Border Services Agency reveals a game of cat and mouse between border officials and Junsa Ha, who's been kicked out of Canada 6 times.
The question, obviously, that is raised is how did he get back into Canada?
The search warrant says 21-year-old Ha, who's nonverbal and has mental health issues, first flew into Canada as a child under a study permit. In 2022, after his permit expired, he pulled out an axe during a fight at this train station in Burnaby, says the warrant. CBSA says the fight was deemed consensual and so Ha wasn't charged, but he was arrested on an immigration warrant and banned from returning to Canada for 1 year. Ha violated the order, coming back to Canada shortly after, before being deported in February 2023, and then was deported 4 more times. He was handed a 120-day sentence in 2024 for previously returning to Canada without authorization. Court heard there was no record of him entering the country because he didn't go through an official border crossing.
Our border with the United States is largely undefended and unmonitored. So there are lots of places that people can cross without being, intercepted by CBSA or even seen.
But this immigration lawyer doesn't think this is part of a wider trend.
I don't think that there are multiple people attempting to enter Canada.
The warrant says Ha was arrested on January 16th at a Burnaby mall after crossing into Canada on January 9th, 1 day after he was deported. The CBSA says Ha had 5 firearm cartridges on him and accuses him of likely smuggling a gun into Canada, an allegation that Ha denies and has not been proven in court. The warrant says Ha is determined to return to Canada because it was a better part of his life that he wanted to revisit. His lawyer previously told a judge that Ha loved academia and excelled in school before things took a turn for the worse and he ended up on the streets. Ha has not been charged with any firearm-related offenses, but is currently in custody on charges related to entering Canada without authorization. His lawyer tells CBC News Ha has yet to enter a plea and declined to comment further. The CBSA also declined an interview request. It says last year it removed about 16,000 inadmissible foreign nationals from Canada, including about 600 Americans. Yasmin Khanea, CBC News, Vancouver.
A day after Canada was spared punishing tariffs from Donald Trump, BC's premier says he is still very anxious about levies on the softwood lumber industry. As Katie DeRosa reports, the forestry sector is going to meet on Friday to talk about ways to reduce reliance on the Americans.
I am glad to see a shift in how the president's talking about Canada, how he's talking about our prime minister.
A temporary sigh of relief from BC's premier, a day after the province was spared any new tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump, who announced reciprocal tariffs on countries in Europe and Asia. David Eby spoke to fellow premiers and Prime Minister Mark Carney shortly before Carney announced 25% reciprocal tariffs on the U.S. auto sector.
Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach.
The two plan to meet next week when the Liberal leader travels to BC. Eby says he remains anxious that Trump will punish Canada's already battered forestry sector following the president's announcement of a national security investigation into wood products imported into the U.S.
My concern is that the president has committed to targeting our softwood lumber industry.
The Premier will meet with representatives from BC's forestry sector in Prince George Friday during the BC Council of Forest Industries conference.
Whether you're First Nations or non-First Nations, British Columbia and Canada, if we see tariffs, it could be the backbreaker on some of some communities who have no access to other markets other than the United States.
The threat of future tariffs is why Eby doubled down on the NDP's tariff response bill. Bill 7, if passed, aims to break down interprovincial trade barriers, prioritize Canadian companies for government contracts, and give the province the ability to charge U.S. trucks driving through BC. Despite changes to the bill last week to remove what critics called sweeping government overreach, the BC Conservatives want the bill scrapped.
Repeal Bill 7 in its entirety to try to address tariffs and bring in a standalone interprovincial trade bill that truly would remove those barriers.
Eby, however, says he has no plans to back down from that legislation, which paves the way for what he called a tariff-proof economy. With the government's majority, the bill is set to become law. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
25% American tariffs on the auto industry are now in place, with Canada set to match that levy. In BC, that could mean big changes to the availability and price of cars. Saurabh Sandhu reports on how drivers might want to navigate the market now.
We have to be very, very cautious.
Sukhibad has been in the used car sales business for 46 years. He senses customers are nervous.
We can feel it. The people holding on. Myself even was planned to open other location, and I'm holding on to it.
25% automotive tariffs announced by U.S. President Donald Trump last week are now in effect. The levies could have severe impacts on the Canadian auto sector, leading to increased prices for new cars. A recent poll shows the fear of the tariffs is playing on the minds of car buyers in BC, with 73% of British Columbians expressing worry about finding reasonable options.
When sentiment is usually that strong, that, can actually drive reality.
Sean McTavish says with tariffs potentially affecting new car prices, many buyers might turn to the used car market, but finding a desirable vehicle could be challenging.
So there's definitely, in parts of the market, there's definitely a shortage of vehicles for, certain makes and models.
The poll conducted by AutoZen in partnership with Angus Reid shows when it comes to used cars, 82% of British Columbians believe the price will rise over the next 12 months.
The other side of it is, I think a lot of people on the fence that are uncertain and that are delaying purchases, have just sort of stepped away.
Bart says he has not noticed a dip in his used car inventory yet, but that could change quickly.
If we're not going to sell too many new cars or build too many new cars, and I'm afraid we have a shortage on inventory.
Experts say car models that are assembled in Canada might not be as impacted by tariffs, but the interconnected supply chain that sees parts crisscross North America many times before they end up in a vehicle will be affected. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Surrey.
Vancouver police say a pregnant woman was seriously injured by a large rock that smashed through the windshield of her Tesla last Sunday. Police say the injured passenger was traveling with her husband north on Nanaimo Street near East 27th in a gray 2022 Tesla when a 2-pound rock, that one right there, flew through the windshield. The VPD says the rock hit her and broke several bones. She is expected to recover physically. The VPD is trying to learn what happened and why.
We're putting it out there to ask people to come forward. We don't want to be alarmist, but we also want to take this very seriously. In the context of everything else that's been happening with a number of other incidents involving Tesla in Vancouver this year alone.
Protests against the EV car manufacturer have erupted across the globe, including here in Metro Vancouver. Anyone with dashcam video taken near Nanaimo and 27th between 8:40 and 9 p.m. on March 30th, a Sunday, is asked to contact Vancouver Police. Firefighters responded to an early morning house fire near 115th Avenue and 84A Avenue in North Delta. Take a look. Police say no one was hurt and everyone in the house has been accounted for. Firefighters say the cause is not suspicious, contrary to online speculation that suggesting the fire was related to an illegal drug lab. Langley is divided into 3 federal ridings this federal election. They span numerous municipalities, including Langley City and Township. Both have seen significant population growth in recent years. And with Election Day looming, our John Hernandez spoke with voters there to find out what matters to them.
Langley has been redrawn from 2 to 3 federal electoral ridings. The newly formed Langley Township, Fraser Heights, Abbotsford, South Langley, and the long-standing Cloverdale, Langley City. The city centre, a historic hub where the key issues are front of mind for many voters.
It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Heather Jenkins has run this popular seafood shop for 27 years and has watched the community grow alongside it.
More apartment buildings opening up and townhouses. It's going to be a bursting city in no time at all. Hopefully we keep up with the services that we need.
Between the city and the township, Langley has grown to nearly 200,000 people.
There's a lot of construction happening on the streets. People are struggling with traffic and struggling with economical change in Langley.
Residents here say the growth has spawned affordability challenges.
Rent prices are going are better than before. They're, across the board it's getting better, but we're still seeing a lot of people struggling to find places.
Regional homeless counts suggest the number of people living on the street has also increased.
Maybe some services for folks who are struggling with, mental health and addictions issues, I think are a little bit maybe on the low side or not as accessible in Langley.
Many residents agree healthcare services here are stretched thin. The area largely served by just one hospital.
I had an appointment for a mammogram. So I tried to book an appointment in Memorial Hospital, but it's like 3 months or more.
Sometimes it was annoying that you had to wait for hours to get in when you were in pain.
And then there's the SkyTrain, which will extend to the city center by 2029, which residents say could both alleviate and compound challenges.
Definitely it'll bring a lot of development, bring a lot of real estate, and with it also, brings some risks. So people are worried about, crime rate.
A rapidly changing community that could become a critical battleground. Polls show narrow gaps between the Conservatives and Liberals in all 3 Langley ridings. John Hernandez, CBC News, Langley.
BC First Nations leaders want the federal Conservative Party to drop a candidate. In old social media posts, Aaron Gunn denies Indigenous people suffered a genocide and claims some First Nations wanted residential schools.
That we still have somebody able to run that obviously can never represent the interests of First Nations people in this riding.
Chamberlain says the comments show a denial of residential school impacts. A Conservative campaign spokesperson says Aaron Gunn has been clear in recognizing the truly horrific events that transpired in residential schools, and any attempt to suggest otherwise is simply false. Another First Nations leader has concerns, though.
It's really concerning that perhaps, the Conservative Party can't work with First Nations peoples across this country, especially with a party that supports an individual this type of view.
CBC News reached out to Gunn several times but did not hear back. Darius Madavi is here for a look at the weather. Sunny outside today.
Oh, what a
Wasn't
beautiful
that lovely?
day.
South Coast at least.
Yes, and across the vast majority of BC, and that'll continue to be the case over the next couple days. We may have some cloud built in to parts of the island as we head into tomorrow, but still mainly sunny for the vast majority of areas. Some showers do start to hit the North Island on Saturday, probably around midday, maybe a little bit before noon. Those showers will work their way down the island through the day. This model has a few showers landing here in Vancouver, Lower Mainland, by Sunday. Sunday's looking worse and worse. I'll be honest with you, like we talked about yesterday, Dan. We'll have more on that later in the show.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks. Still ahead, West Vancouver's long dream of a continuous, long, publicly accessible seawall and waterfront will soon become a reality. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place after this. A new report into the overdose death of a University of Victoria student last year has found that choices and mistakes led to her death. As Rafferty Baker reports, the independent probe has now made 18 recommendations.
The report says first-year UVic student Sydney McIntyre-Starco and 2 other people took drugs on campus in January last year. She and 1 other student overdosed and fell to the ground unconscious. Her family says she suffered a cardiac arrest due to fentanyl poisoning and died in hospital days later. Now, former Abbotsford Police Chief Bob Rich has published his report into the tragedy. He found there were several points during that night where, had the response been different, McIntyre-Starco would likely have survived. Campus security administered naloxone, but not immediately, as they weren't told the students had taken drugs, and security didn't provide respiratory support. Advocate Leslie Bain says it's the university's responsibility to make sure students are safe, but the security's response fell short.
Everything was scattered.
I really hate to think about it because she could so easily have been saved had they had a coordinated response.
In a statement, McIntyre-Starco's family says it appreciates how thorough and thoughtful the report is, but her loved ones write that it remains impossible for us to understand how the responding officers were not better prepared. UVic's president won't say whether he agrees with the report that mistakes were made, but says they accept all of its 18 recommendations.
The recommendations really, again, compel us to recognize that the crises that students face these days are rapidly changing, whether it's the opioid crisis, mental health issues. And as an institution, we have to make sure we're agile, flexible, and we're adaptive.
Both Hall and McIntyre-Starco's family say they expect to learn more about her death at the coroner's inquest later this month. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
You will eventually be able to stroll on a continuous seawall through West Vancouver's Ambleside waterfront. As Renee Lucas reports, the district has spent decades buying up waterfront homes to help connect that path.
Terry Frewer and his family have called this property on Ambleside Beach home for almost 50 years.
We had 2 little boys, and we settled here. Joanne figured out this was the ideal place to raise little kids, and the boys were little beach urchins. They just took off all day on the beach. It's great.
Frewer says when they first bought the compact Japanese-inspired mid-century home in 1978, it was a quiet community.
Nobody knew this beach existed at that time. There was never anybody here.
But a lot has changed over the years. The area now packed with people each day, locals and tourists alike. For decades, the District of West Vancouver has had a vision to create a continuous seawall and provide public waterfront access, slowly buying up waterfront homes and cabins since 1975. Now, the district has purchased the final property, clearing the way for completion of the plan.
Well, it feels great to know that the vision has actually become a reality. It's a really wonderful feeling.
Ambleside Park is set to be connected to John Lawson Park with green spaces and multi-use plazas along the shoreline.
I think it's great. There's a huge potential to make this waterfront nice, like, say, Sydney or lots of places in the Southern Hemisphere, Brisbane.
Yeah. I think that would be great, because I think having more space to kind of do recreational things would be great for families.
But for the Frewers, the sale is bittersweet.
Well, I have to say that the way they've developed this park has been so beautiful. So to be part of that, we're actually quite proud to. If we have to leave and the house is gone, at least it's going to be, a beautiful extension of what we've already been enjoying all this time.
The house is set to be removed in early fall, and the new continuous green space is expected to open to the public by spring of 2026. Renee Lucas, CBC News, West Vancouver.
A look at the day that was in White Rock. Darius will have your BC-wide weather forecast as the weekend inches ever closer. Stick around.
I think it's important to give a human face to the stories that we hear every day, the people that they affect. And I think talking to those people is what really gives us the true sense of the impact of the stories that we're hearing.
Liberal leader Mark Carney returned to his role as Prime Minister today to address Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. He outlined his plan for Canada's short and long-term response to a U.S. policy shift he calls historic and a tragedy.
The 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over.
Carney announced duties to match the U.S. auto tariffs. He also pledged tariff proceeds will be used to help Canadian workers hit by Trump's trade war. The Liberal leader says Canada must commit to accelerating industry and infrastructure, cutting interprovincial trade barriers, and building overseas trade relationships. Now, stock markets around the globe plunged this morning in response to the new American tariffs. Donald Trump has put 10% levies on nearly all countries, with rates higher for more than 5 dozen nations or trading blocs. The U.S. Commerce Secretary says those levies are needed. But as Richard Madden reports, not every American lawmaker is convinced.
I think it's going very well. President Donald Trump dismissing the global fallout from his aggressive tariff policy by comparing it to an urgent medical surgery that needed to be done.
It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing.
The administration says it's short-term pain for long-term prosperity after Trump slapped sweeping 10% blanket tariffs on nearly every country in the world. Markets have since tanked, and economists are now warning of inflationary price hikes, retaliation from allies, causing a potential recession ignited by Trump's own trade and tariff war. But the White House says the president's actions will realign global trade, and the world simply needs to trust him.
Let Donald Trump run the global economy. He knows what he's doing. He's been talking about it for 35 years. You got to trust Donald Trump in the White House. That's why they put him there.
On Capitol Hill, more Republicans are publicly breaking from Trump's tariff agenda. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley introduced a bill that would block Trump from imposing more tariffs without getting congressional approval first. Democrats, meantime, are seizing on the issue, saying consumers will suffer and Republicans will be punished.
I think what we're going to see is an enormous correction politically because of the enormous damage economically that Trump is inflicting on America.
Now, many here are calling this Trump's biggest gamble of his presidency, with huge economic and political consequences. But the White House believes these tariffs will eventually bring back manufacturing and jobs to the U.S., and they brush off criticism they might be wrong. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
The federal government is taking steps to ease the pain of Trump's trade war on Canada's auto sector. But as Philip Lee Shannock explains, the impact of tariffs is already being felt.
Outside this General Motors plant just east of Toronto, the reality of U.S. tariffs is sinking in.
I think everybody's afraid. Everybody should be afraid.
This auto worker feels for Stellantis employees down in Windsor. Thousands got news that they would be laid off for 2 weeks for now.
I'm in the same position as everybody else. We're just trying to survive, and we're just trying to make a living.
The auto workers have been through it all. We've been through plant closures. We've been through layoffs.
Workers here who make Chevy Silverados say they will fight to keep doing the work that they're proud of.
Our members are sick of being antagonized and threatened by Donald Trump.
Like Oshawa, Windsor's future is linked to the auto industry. Already on the first day auto tariffs came into effect, Stellantis announced it's idling its Windsor plant for 2 weeks. The union that represents almost 4,000 workers at the plant say auto tariffs could upend a supply chain that will impact tens of thousands more.
You have a whole host of second, third-tier suppliers, both unionized and non-unionized, both in the States, Canada, and Mexico.
Those feeder plants, whether they make seats or other parts, will have to begin laying off workers due to the tightly integrated parts supply chain.
And within 12 hours, we see one of the most important plants in this country. It's been around for 99 years. Go on a 2-week break.
And he says workers here will not be the only ones impacted. About 900 employees in Indiana and Michigan will also face layoffs.
it's going to shut down the suppliers to that plant and the suppliers to the plant in Mexico, many of which are American.
Some say this move by Stellantis is just the beginning as manufacturers like Ford and GM start to crunch the numbers.
So everybody needs to take a pause and understand what exactly is going to happen here. How will this be applied? What are the timelines? And then ultimately, what are the cost implications for the business? Can we continue to profitably produce vehicles in this environment?
Federal and provincial governments have pledged to help workers affected by U.S. tariffs, a shorter wait time to receive employment insurance, and any revenue from counter tariffs imposed on U.S. goods to help soften the blow. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
The head of the European Commission has described Trump's new tariffs as, quote, a major blow to the world economy. As Crystal Gamansing reports, the European Union is planning to oppose countermeasures if talks with the U.S. administration fail.
La décision qui a été annoncée cette nuit est une décision brutale et infondée.
Brutal and unfounded. Those were the words used by French President Emmanuel Macron to describe tariffs announced by U.S. President Donald Trump Wednesday. In Paris, Macron met with French businesses seriously affected by the sweeping tariffs. He said the custom duties are a shock for international trade, and he's not the only European leader expressing frustration. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said the tariffs were fundamentally wrong. A universal 20% levy on all imports from the EU into the U.S. is expected to take effect April 5th. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, said the bloc of 27 nations will respond strongly together, but that the EU would rather negotiate, not escalate.
The tariffs will also hurt consumers around the world. It will be felt immediately. Millions of citizens will face higher grocery bills. Medication will cost more, as well as transportation. Inflation will go up. And this is hurting in particular the most vulnerable citizens.
A lower tariff has been placed on the UK, just 10%. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says that's because the UK trade deficit with the US is, quote, fair and balanced.
It is actually a fair and balanced relationship if you look at the numbers. And of course, we've got decades worth of a special relationship with the United States. And I think it's by focusing on those features that we can take the necessary steps to secure our economy through hopefully a deal with options on the table.
The U.S. is the UK's second largest trading partner behind the EU. That relationship is worth roughly £315 billion. That's about 580 billion Canadian dollars. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Pierre Poilievre singled out the U.S. auto tariffs for a policy announcement on the campaign trail today. The Conservative leader says he would fight them by eliminating federal tax on Canadian-made vehicles, a proposal the NDP made just days ago.
By saving cash-strapped Canadians, families, their hard-earned money, we will increase demand for Canadian-made cars and keep more workers on the job.
Poilievre provided a list of vehicles he says meet his Made in Canada criteria. He also denounced Donald Trump's trade war, describing it as tariff madness. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, meanwhile, made a campaign stop announcement in Ottawa, proposing to bring back victory bonds to help the Canadian economy deal with Trump's tariffs.
A victory bond would be a guaranteed investment where you would purchase a bond, a 5-year or 10-year, and if you hold it to maturity, you would get all the revenue tax-free.
Singh says the revenue from those bonds would create work for Canadians and help rebuild public infrastructure. The secure, tax-free saving bonds were used during both world wars to raise money for the conflicts. Singh wraps up the day in Montreal. He and 4 other party leaders appear tonight on Radio-Canada's special program, 5 chefs, une élection. That means 5 leaders, 1 election. We are less than a month away from Election Day, but you don't have to wait until April 28th to cast your ballot. Avneet Dhillon explains what you need to know about voting in this federal ballot.
Election day is April 28th, but you don't have to wait until then to vote. Here's everything you need to know about voting in this federal election. You can check if you're registered to vote at elections.ca. If you're not registered or you need to change your address, you can do it online. But if you miss the deadline to register online, you can still vote. You'll register in person when you go to vote at your assigned polling station. You can find your polling station by typing in your postal code on the Elections Canada website. Remember to bring ID to prove your identity and address. There are 3 options. 1 piece of government-issued ID that has your photo, name, and address, like a driver's license. Or 2 pieces that both have your name. At least one needs to have your address, like a student ID and a utility bill. If you don't have ID, the 3rd option is declaring your identity and address in writing at the polling station and having someone vouch for you. That person has to be assigned to your polling station and must prove their identity and address. Now, if you're traveling and you won't be home on April 28th, you've got some options to vote early. First, there's the advance polls a week before Election Day. For 4 days, from Friday, April 18th to Monday, April 21st, you can vote at your assigned polling station from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And if you won't be home those days either, you can vote right now at any Elections Canada office across the country, as long as you do it by Tuesday, April 22nd before 6 p.m. You can look up the Elections Canada office nearest to you on elections.ca. Just type in your postal code in the My Voter information box and click on Where is my local Elections Canada office. But if you choose to vote this way, you'll be voting by special ballot. That means your ballot won't have a list of candidates to choose from. Instead, there will be a blank space for you to write the name of the candidate you're voting for. An election worker at the office can help you if you have questions. You'll be able to look up the list of candidates on the Elections Canada website by April 9th. To vote before then, you can contact the political party of your choice to find out who's running in your riding. And if you're a Canadian traveling or living abroad, you can vote by mail. You can apply to vote by mail online or by calling Elections Canada. And don't wait. The deadline to apply is Tuesday, April 22nd by 6 p.m. You'll get a special ballot voting kit in the mail. It comes with a pre-addressed envelope with prepaid postage and voting instructions. For your vote to count, Elections Canada needs to receive your completed ballot by Election Day, April 28th by 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So keep in mind how long it'll take your ballot to travel by mail. If you're a student living away from home, many schools are participating in the Vote on Campus program. Vote on Campus is open for 4 days, from Sunday, April 13th to Wednesday, April 16th. If you live in a remote Indigenous community, you might have more flexible advance voting days. Contact your local Elections Canada office to find out. For Canadians living in seniors' homes or long-term care facilities, Elections Canada offers mobile polling stations in most residences. And for Canadians who are incarcerated, voting day is April 16th at correctional institutions. If you have any other questions about voting in the federal election, email us at ask@cbc.ca.
Donald Trump's latest trade war salvo has got many countries by surprise, as we've seen. But the long list of the places slapped with export tariffs include places where no one lives. This is Heard Island, a remote territory near Antarctica that belongs to Australia. No human is there except penguins. It faces the 10% U.S. tariff alongside some of the major global economies. The last time it was visited by people was most likely a decade ago. A puzzling move by the Trump administration had Australia's Prime Minister remark, quote, "Nowhere on Earth is safe." A mysterious illness has been wiping out marine life on the West Coast for over a decade. But now scientists have found a glimmer of hope, a sea star haven right here in BC. You'll want to see this.
So I know when I really like a song, if within the first 3 seconds, I'm already vibing to it.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond.
It's not one person dictating what good music is, it's the community sharing what good music is.
Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Sea stars were on the brink of extinction because of a mysterious illness. But as our science and climate specialist Darius Madavi explains, scientists may have discovered a safe haven for the 5-limbed creatures right here on BC's Central Coast.
Just off the west coast, a mysterious illness has been devastating marine life for over a decade. An epidemic that has wiped out entire populations. Sea star wasting disease. The name is grim, but accurate. Once infected, a sea star will literally waste away in a matter of days.
They'll get these lesions, so it sort of looks like their tissue is dissolving. And at the end of the disease, it really will just look like a pile of mush.
Scientists first noticed something was wrong 12 years ago, right here in BC. Some of the first clues came from these sunflower sea stars.
So they're these amazing animals. They're like, for a sea star, they're super charismatic. So they are as big as an extra large pizza. So like very large sea stars.
In 2013, their populations plummeted in Howe Sound, just northwest of Vancouver. Within months, the disease had spread down the west coast to Mexico, and not long after, we saw it up around Alaska.
We lost 90% of them from Mexico to Alaska, which is a huge number, and our estimate was over 5 billion sea stars were lost during this disease outbreak.
Today, the sunflower sea star is listed as critically endangered, and at least 26 sea star species are known to be affected. Over the past 12 years, scientists have seen the effects of this disease firsthand thousands of times, including Jeff Shaw, a diver and biologist at the Vancouver Aquarium.
In recent years, I've only seen sort of smaller, more juvenile size ones, but they are a lot harder to come by than they used to be.
But it wasn't only out in the wild.
We actually had it wipe out all the sea stars in our lab when it came through, so it came pretty quickly.
Researchers say we've seen die-offs with similar symptoms before, in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, but never this intense or over such a wide area. Yet after all this time, the cause of the disease remains a mystery, in part because it's hard to figure out what we're looking for.
We don't know what is normal for a sea star. So what bacteria should we find in a sea star? What virus should we find? We're actually beginning to learn that, but we didn't before this outbreak. And so it made it a little bit more difficult to pinpoint what was different.
But one thing is clear. Climate change is a major threat as marine heat waves become more common.
The higher the temperature, the more likely the onset of the disease, and the harder it is for an infected sea star to come back from that.
But now, researchers have good news. There may be a sea star safe haven right here in BC. Gaiman says it all started when her team spoke with the Central Coast Indigenous Resource Alliance.
They told us that they were finding big, large, high-density populations of sunflower stars. And that was not something we were seeing elsewhere.
Together, they found the secret lies in BC's many fjords. In the winter, Arctic outflow winds rush through the narrow channels, mixing the water, cooling it, and adding oxygen, all of which is great for sea stars. But in the summer, surface waters across the Pacific start to warm back up, which can be deadly. But in the fjords, runoff from mountaintop glaciers causes a layer of fresh water to form over the top.
And sea stars really don't like fresh water. They don't do well there. So they stay below that fresh water in the cold water, and they're held away from getting to the surface where warm water is.
So it's like a force field on the top of the water, keeping them down for their own good.
Yeah, exactly.
Researchers say this is good news, but it's not a silver bullet.
Every year I get really happy when the Arctic art flows happen because I'm like, oh good, another year for these sea stars and another time. And then I get very worried when we don't have enough snowpack, because I think both of those things are really important for this habitat.
Of course, this work isn't just about helping out sea stars. Tons of research shows that these animals are critical to their ecosystems and other marine life. Without them, many coastal areas have lost their healthy kelp forests. Areas like Howe Sound now resemble barren underwater wastelands. Scientists say those threats are what make this knowledge so valuable. It can support the work other conservationists are already doing, like breeding programs.
If we're going to try and raise animals and put them back in the ocean, we maybe really need to think about the temperature conditions that they're going to be experiencing when they get out there.
There's no question there's still a long way to go to help these species recover. But scientists say this is a much-needed glimmer of hope. Darius Madavi, CBC News, Vancouver.
He was there, and now he's here. Darius Madavi, different jacket, but still looking good. Very interesting stuff. A glimmer of hope among the fjords of BC.
That's right. Yes, a little bit of good news, and actually should have put a snowpack graphic up because we talked about how important the snowpack is in this case for these sea stars, and a little bit of good news there in the last couple of weeks. That atmospheric river that came in, freezing levels staying low, we got a big dump of snow, and so the snowpack has improved across BC about 5 percentage points from 83% normal, 17% below normal to just 12% below normal now. So a little bit of good news. And I got to wear my fish shirt because sea stars. So that's also a win. Let's talk about the weather now. We have this ridge of high pressure building in. That's what's bringing us the sunshine across BC. It's going to continue over into tomorrow. Some more cloud may build tomorrow in parts of the island, but then not spread to the rest of BC until late in the weekend or even Monday for parts of the interior. But you can see here that low pressure system starts to have more of an influence as that ridge retreats as we get into the end of the weekend. You can see that in terms of the rain forecast that we're looking at, first feeding into the north and central coast, really starting late tomorrow. And then for the North Island, probably midday Saturday. For the rest of the island, slowly working its way down here, not reaching the South Island and Lower Mainland, probably until late in the day on midday on Sunday. It looks like the rain will start there now. It has been shifting early and earlier. Sunday has been looking sketchier and sketchier in terms of it being a nice, dry, sunny day, and temperatures have been coming down as well. So just be aware of that. The forecast has changed a little bit for Sunday, Saturday. Tomorrow and Saturday both still look beautiful and sunny and warm, though. I wanted to show this accumulation graphic just really quickly because I wanted to highlight the fact that it won't be too much rain that's coming. This runs until midday on Sunday, so nothing too crazy for now, but it will remain showery into early next week as well. And again, our rain doesn't really arrive until midday Saturday, so that's why we don't see much here in Metro Vancouver. Temperatures, like I said, are climbing into tomorrow and then into Saturday, and then they fall on Sunday here on the coast, and they remain high in the interior. Then on Monday, they will start to fall in the interior as well. Here's our condition forecast for tomorrow. Lots of sunshine across the board. Not really anywhere else seeing anything but that, but some cloud does start to build in for the north and central coast. And here's our 5-day forecast here in Vancouver. It's a pretty easy one. Sunshine tomorrow, a little bit more cloud builds in late in the day on Saturday, and then some rain begins late in the weekend.
Okay. Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Scientists have produced strong new evidence that shows getting the shingles vaccine could lower your risk of dementia by 20%. Christine Burek breaks down the research and what it could mean for your cognitive health.
It's a vaccine for shingles. Now scientists say there's more evidence it can lower the risk of developing dementia by as much as 20%.
It would have huge implications for dementia care and also for research into dementia and the causes of dementia.
A new study published in the journal Nature looked at over 200,000 older adults in Wales for 7 years. In 2013, a shingles vaccine was offered to those who were age 79 but not 80. This unique rollout gave scientists a chance to go back and compare two nearly identical groups, one vaccinated, one not.
This is a landmark study.
Researchers found the vaccine reduced the probability of a new dementia diagnosis by approximately 1/5, with the strongest effect in women.
If you consider over the past decades we've had nothing that affects dementia or prevents it, a 20% reduction is a major step in the right direction.
Researchers aren't sure why the shingles vaccine may be protective. They do know shingles is a painful rash caused by reactivation of the chickenpox virus in a person's system. One theory is
just by preventing shingles, it prevents this inflammatory event that might contribute to inflammation in the brain and the development of diseases like dementia.
And to think that there's an added benefit, that's pretty amazing.
67-year-old Kathy Howell got her shot. She's also exercising and playing games to keep her brain as healthy as possible.
It's just good to be always engaged in trying to learn new things.
The shingles shot used in this latest study is an older vaccine, but other studies show the current vaccine offers even better protection against shingles. Researchers say it may also better protect your brain. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Any interest in traveling to Mars? Well, there may be a way to get there a wee bit faster. After the break, the nuclear-powered rocket in the works. Stick around.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
A new British startup has unveiled a space rocket concept, which it says could cut travel time to Mars in half.
The startup, Pulsar Fusion, says its nuclear-powered rocket is designed to meet a spacecraft in orbit, attach to it, and carry it to its destination at breakneck speed. Think more than 800,000 kilometers per hour. The fastest object ever built, NASA's Parker Solar Probe, peaked at a measly 692,000 kilometers per hour.
Project's in its early stages of construction, but the company hopes to achieve nuclear fusion in orbit in 2027. And yes, we will talk about that.
Yeah, that's sooner than I expected, honestly. Early stages and ready by 2027.
Yeah, they're feeling very ambitious.
Maybe
stiff upper lip and all that.
Yeah, instead of SkyTrain, maybe we should have a nuclear-powered rocket.
TransLink, if you're listening.
Be faster, yeah. 2027, you're on it. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, YouTube, and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.